I woke before sunrise because sleep had become unreliable. The bed was too big, had been for 3 years. I didn't think about that anymore, or I tried not to. Thinking changed nothing. Work did. I pulled on canvas pants and a work shirt, both worn soft from washing. My boots waited by the door, mud from yesterday's fence check still dried on the heels. This was my uniform now. Mrs. Henderson at the feed store called it inappropriate. I called it practical. We'd agreed to disagree, which meant she whispered, and I ignored her. The ranch spread out before me in the gray light before dawn. 200 acres of high desert country, half of it grazing land. The rest, scrub and hope. James had bought it on speculation. I'd kept it on stubbornness. The town had given me 6 months before I'd sell. That was 3 years ago. I was still here. They were still waiting. I saddled my mare without thinking, muscle memory guiding my hands through the familiar motions. Check the girth. Adjust the stirrups. Run my hand along her neck to let her know I was there. She nickered softly. Sometimes I thought she was the only creature in the county who didn't judge my choices. The fence line ran along the eastern border, where my land met open range. I'd learned to check it weekly after losing 6 head to a broken rail the first year. Expensive lesson. I didn't repeat expensive lessons. The sun broke over the ridge as I rode, painting the desert gold and rust. Beautiful country if you could stand the loneliness. I'd learned to stand it. Had to. The alternative was returning east to my sister's house, becoming the tragic widow in the spare room, the cautionary tale at dinner parties. I'd chosen cattle and silence instead. The fence was holding. I made notes in the small book I carried which posts needed reinforcing, where the wire was wearing thin. James used to handle this. Now I did. The learning curve had been steep. The satisfaction of competence was real. I'd loved James. We'd been married 8 years when the fever took him. Good years. Mostly. He'd been kind, patient with my questions, proud when I learned bookkeeping. But he'd led and I'd followed, the way couples did, the way everyone expected. Now I led, followed no one. The town found this concerning. I finished the fence check by noon and headed into town for supplies. The feed store was quiet. Just Mrs. Henderson behind the counter and Mrs. Crawford examining seed packets with more attention than seed. Packets required. Martha, Mrs. Henderson said. She always used my first name, never Mrs. Wilson. A small dismissal that felt larger each time. Mrs. Henderson, I kept my voice pleasant. I need 50 pounds of feed grain and salt blocks. Running low already. Her eyebrows lifted. Maybe you're feeding too rich. Maybe I'm running more cattle than I did last month. I counted out exact payment. The grain, she fetched it, moving slower than necessary. Mrs. Crawford abandoned her seeds to join us. We were just saying, Mrs. Crawford began, and I knew what came next. It's such a shame. A young woman alone, if you'd just consider selling. Martha. Start fresh somewhere. Find a nice man who... I have a nice ranch. I interrupted, polite but firm. And I'm keeping it. Mrs. Crawford's expression shifted to pity. Pity was worse than judgment. Of course, dear. But what man wants a woman who acts like one? The words hung there. I'd heard variations before, but these particular words lodged like splinters. I loaded my grain without flinching. Thanked them both. And left. The ride home took 30 minutes. I spent them not thinking about what Mrs. Crawford had said, not wondering if she was right, not counting the years ahead. One plate at dinner, one set of footsteps, one voice in the silence. By the time I reached the ranch, I'd almost convinced myself I didn't care. That evening, I made stew from yesterday's roast, set one bowl on the table, one spoon, one glass of water. The kitchen was clean, everything in its place. I'd learned to appreciate order after chaos. I ate slowly, reading cattle market reports by lamplight. The prices were holding steady. I'd need to sell the yearlings by fall, buy breeding stock in spring. The calculations soothed me. Numbers didn't judge, numbers just were. After dinner, I washed the single bowl, the single spoon, the single glass, dried them, put them away. The routine was comforting. I told myself that. Told myself I'd chosen this life deliberately, built it from grief and determination, shaped it into something solid. The empty chair across from me suggested otherwise. I went to bed early because there was nothing else to do. Lay in the too-big bed and listened to the wind against the house. Somewhere, a coyote called. Another answered. Even coyotes had company. I was alone. I'd chosen it. I told myself, lies we tell ourselves taste like truth when we repeat them enough. I'd learned that too. Learned a lot of things since James died. How to run a ranch. How to bid at auction. How to ignore whispers. How to stop hoping for things that wouldn't come. Hope, I'd discovered, was a luxury women like me couldn't afford. I closed my eyes and didn't dream of anything at all. The stockyard in Silver Creek opened at dawn on Tuesdays. I arrived 15 minutes early because early meant first choice, and first choice meant profit. The fall sale brought ranchers from 3 counties, all of us calculating margins and studying bloodlines. I'd come for heifers, prime breeding stock to expand my herd. I'd saved for 18 months, planned the genetics, mapped out which bulls to pair them with. This wasn't impulse. This was strategy. The cattle were penned in lots, numbered with chalk on the rails. I walked the line slowly, checking conformation, disposition, weight. Lot 7 caught my eye, 6 heifers. Good bone structure, calm temperament. Exactly what I needed. I'd budget $1,200. Could stretch to $13 if necessary. The yard filled gradually. Men I recognized. A few I didn't. We nodded to each other. That minimal acknowledgement that passed for politeness. I was used to being the only woman. Used to standing slightly apart. Neither welcomed nor quite excluded. Tolerated, that was the word. I was tolerated. The auctioneer opened at 7 sharp. I waded through the first 3 lots, watching the bidding rhythm, feeling out the competition. Then Lot 7 came up. I bid early to establish intent. A rancher named Cooper countered. I nodded. He nodded back. The price climbed in $50 increments. At $1,100. Cooper dropped out. I exhaled. Almost mine. $1,200, a voice called from my left. I turned. Tall man, maybe 40, wearing an Eastern suit that had seen trail dust. His boots were worn, but quality. His hands looked capable. I pegged him immediately newcomer, trying to establish himself. I'd seen the type before. I bid $1,250. $1,300, he countered smoothly. My jaw tightened. I needed these heifers. My whole breeding plan centered on them. But I also needed to stay within budget. Not let pride overrule sense. $1,350, I said. $1,400. The yard went quiet. That was high for heifers, even prime ones. Other ranchers turned to watch. I felt their curiosity like pressure. I calculated fast. I could stretch to 15. Barely. It would mean no new equipment this year, tighter margins through winter, but these heifers were worth it. 1,500, I said clearly. He paused. I watched him think. His eyes met mine across the pen. Something passed between us, acknowledgement of the game we were playing, respect for the stakes. Sold, the auctioneer called when the man didn't counter. Lot 7 to Mrs. Wilson for 1,500. I nodded once, moved to the office to pay. My hands shook slightly as I counted out the money. Pride and relief mixed with irritation at being pushed so high. I was arranging transport when footsteps approached. I knew without turning it was him. Smart bidding. He said. I turned slowly. Up close, he was younger than I'd thought. Maybe 35. His eyes were gray and direct. Not aggressive, just present. You pushed me higher than necessary, I said. You pushed back. He smiled slightly. I respect that. Thomas Barrett. He offered his hand. I shook it briefly. His grip was firm without proving anything. Martha Wilson. What's your breeding strategy? The question surprised me. Most men didn't ask, they told. They explained what I should do, how I should manage, why my plans wouldn't work. Cross them with my Hereford bull. I said carefully. Improve disease resistance. Market weight. Good bloodline choice. He spoke like he knew cattle. I'm establishing a ranch about 15 miles north. Looking at breeding stock myself. These were my breeding stock. I noticed. He wasn't apologetic. Just factual. You bid like someone who'd done the math. I didn't know what to do with straightforward respect. It felt like a trap somehow, though I couldn't articulate why. Mrs. Wilson. The yard manager called me. Your transport's here. Excuse me, I said to Barrett. He stepped aside. Good luck with your herd. I supervised the loading, watching to ensure the heifers were handled properly. When I glanced back, Barrett was talking with another rancher, asking questions about local suppliers, learning the territory. Smart. I climbed into my wagon and drove home with my purchase. Victory should have tasted sweet. Instead, it tasted like questions I didn't want to ask. Why had his respect unsettled me? Why did I keep hearing his voice saying, you bid like someone who'd done the math? Why did competence acknowledged feel more dangerous than competence dismissed? I didn't have answers. Didn't want them. I focused on the road, the heifers behind me, the calculations ahead, numbers I understood, men who asked questions instead of making assumptions, those I didn't trust yet. Maybe never would. I drove home with prime heifers and an uneasy feeling. I'd won the auction. Wasn't sure what else I'd started. Barrett appeared at my ranch the following Tuesday. I saw him riding up the drive and felt my spine straighten automatically. Defenses rising before I'd consciously decided to defend anything. I met him at the porch, wiping my hands on my work pants. I'd been fixing a stall door that had warped in the heat. Mr. Barrett, Mrs. Wilson. He dismounted smoothly. I have a business proposition. Business. The word should have relaxed me. Instead, it sharpened my attention. Men didn't propose business to women. They proposed management, guidance, improvement, vocabulary that meant the same thing they wanted: control. I'm listening, I said. "The railroad's extending a spur line through this territory. But they require minimum combined acreage to justify a stop. Your land plus mine could meet that requirement." Nah, I processed this quickly. Railroad access would transform my operation. Better prices, easier shipping, lower costs. It was exactly the kind of development that could turn modest profit into real security. It was also exactly the kind of opportunity that came with catches. "What's the split?" I asked. "Equal investment, equal benefit. I'd propose we form a partnership specifically for the railroad negotiation. Defined terms, clear boundaries." Partnership. I let the word hang there. Business partnership. He clarified, "For this project only." I studied him. He stood easily, not crowding my space, not postured for confrontation. His expression was open. That made me more suspicious, not less. "Coffee," I heard myself say. He nodded. I led him inside, hyper-aware of his presence in my space. Men didn't enter my house. The town whispered enough without adding fuel, but railroad access was worth weathering whispers. I made coffee while he waited at the kitchen table. When I turned with 2 cups, he'd spread a map across the worn wood, weighted corners with salt shaker and sugar bowl. The spur would run here. He traced a line with his finger. "Stop here. Between our properties, your cattle could load here. Mine here. Shared costs for the platform and siding." I set his coffee down and leaned over the map. The logistics were solid. The location made sense. The benefits were substantial. "What's the catch?" I asked. "No catch. I need your acreage. You need mine. Mathematics." I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe business could be simple. That partnership didn't require surrender. But I'd learned caution. "I'll need to see the terms in writing," I said. "Review the costs, the timeline, the obligations. Fair?" He pulled papers from his jacket. "I drafted a preliminary agreement. Take your time reviewing it." I read while he drank his coffee in silence. The terms were clear. Equal investment, $2,000 each. Equal vote on decisions. Partnership specific to railroad spur. Terminating upon completion. No provisions for expansion. No clauses about operational control. It was, improbably, exactly what he'd said it was. "I'll need a week to consider," I said. "Of course." He stood to leave. I walked him to the porch, and he mounted his horse, then paused. "Mrs. Wilson, I know you don't know me yet. I know trust is earned, but I'm not interested in managing you or your operation. I'm interested in mutual benefit through cooperation. That's all?" I didn't answer. Couldn't articulate the tangle of suspicion and hope his words created. He tipped his hat and rode off. I went back inside and read the agreement 3 more times. Searched for hidden clauses, deceptive language, escape hatches that would leave me compromised. Found nothing. The next day I rode to Silver Creek and paid a lawyer $5 to review the agreement. He found it straightforward and fair. No hidden issues. That evening I made dinner. Set 1 plate on the table, looked at the partnership agreement beside it. The railroad would secure my ranch's future. That was undeniable. The question was whether I could partner without losing ground. After dinner, I washed my single plate, dried it, put it away. Then I noticed the second coffee cup by the sink. Barrett's cup from earlier. I'd washed it automatically while he'd packed the map. I held it now, studying it like it might explain something. He'd drunk his coffee black. Left the cup clean when he'd finished. Small things. Respectful things. I dried the cup and put it in the cabinet. 2 coffee cups drying by the sink had looked almost natural when he'd left. Now there was just one again. The usual number. I signed the partnership agreement that night. Practical choice. Business choice. The railroad would transform my operation. And transforming my operation was worth the risk of partnership. Business partnership. I reminded myself the distinction mattered. I repeated it like prayer. Like protection, I'd agreed to partnership. Just partnership. Nothing beyond defined terms and clear boundaries. I told myself that as I fell asleep. Told myself that for weeks after. Every time I caught myself watching for his arrival on Tuesdays, lies we tell ourselves taste like truth when we repeat them enough. We met twice weekly to prepare the railroad proposal. Tuesdays at my place, Thursdays at his. The rhythm became familiar before I meant to let it. His ranch was newer than mine, but well organized. He'd built practical structures, chosen good breeding stock, hired 2 hands who seemed competent. A man who'd done his research before establishing himself. I appreciated that more than I wanted to admit. We worked efficiently together. I'd start a sentence about market projections, and he'd finish it with logistics. He'd outline infrastructure needs, and I'd add cost calculations. By the 3rd meeting, we'd stopped needing full explanations. Shorthand developed, partnership language. The Railroad Commission required detailed projections, infrastructure plans, market analysis, and community benefit assessments. We divided the work evenly. I took breeding programs and market projections. He handled infrastructure and regulatory requirements. Your numbers are more conservative than mine, he observed one Tuesday. Reviewing my market analysis, I plan for drought years. I said, hope for good ones. Smart. He adjusted his own projections to match my methodology. Didn't argue or explain why I was wrong. Just adapted. That surprised me. Most men I'd known took disagreement as challenge. He took it as information. Spring flooding came in late April. The creek that ran between our properties overflowed, taking out a 30-foot section of fence that marked the boundary. Water blurred property lines. Cattle didn't care about surveys. I discovered the damage at dawn during fence check. Started repairs immediately the sooner the fence was restored. The less confusion about whose cattle were whose. Barrett arrived an hour later. He'd clearly been checking his own fence line and found the same breach. I'll handle this section, I said, gesturing to the southern half. Or we could work together and finish by noon. He countered. I wanted to refuse. Pride suggested I could manage alone, but practicality overruled pride. Again, we worked in coordinated silence. He held posts while I tamped earth. I stretched wire while he secured staples, our movements synchronized without discussion. When he handed me tools, he put them directly in my hand, not near it. Small gesture. It meant he registered my competence. Didn't assume I'd drop things. By 11, we'd finished. The fence was solid. Our hands were muddy. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. Coffee, I offered. He nodded. I made coffee while he washed at the pump. When he came inside, his hair was wet and he'd rolled his sleeves. Something about the domesticity of him in my kitchen. Water dripping from his hair. Coffee brewing made my chest tight. I poured 2 cups without asking how he took it. I knew by then. Black, no sugar. Thank you, he said, accepting the cup. You did half the work. I mean for the partnership, this whole project. Most people would have handled the railroad bid independently, tried to edge out neighbors. I sat across from him. Most people aren't interested in cooperation. No, he agreed. They're interested in winning. And you're not. I'm interested in building something that lasts. Winning matters less than sustainability. We drank our coffee in silence, comfortable silence. When had his silence become familiar? When had I stopped cataloging his presence as intrusion and started experiencing it as what company partnership? Something unnamed that made me nervous. The weeks blurred together. After that, more meetings, more shared work. The irrigation system needed expansion. We handled it together. The water board meeting required both signatures we attended together. The hardware store started assuming we'd arrive as a unit. Setting aside supplies for the Wilson Barrett order, I noticed other things too. Small things I didn't want to notice. He brought extra coffee in a thermos during dawn surveys. I started bringing cornbread to Thursday meetings. He knew I preferred morning work schedules. I knew he reviewed contracts twice before signing. He mentioned once that he didn't like crowds. I found myself steering conversations away from the monthly town gatherings he clearly endured, rather than enjoyed. Watching him became habitual. Not watching him in any romantic sense, or so I told myself. Watching him the way you watch a partner in a complex dance. Anticipating movements, adjusting rhythm. Functioning as unit rather than individuals. The Saturday night gathering in early May was mandatory attendance for anyone wanting community support. The railroad proposal needed that support. So we both went. I wore my best dress, which wasn't saying much. Barrett wore his suit, which somehow looked more Eastern against the weathered ranchers in their Sunday clothes. I expected him to spend the evening networking, building relationships, making himself agreeable. Instead, he declined 3 offers to dance from young women who'd positioned themselves hopefully near the punch bowl. Spent most of the evening with old Henry Crawford, asking detailed questions about early settlement. Water rights history, winter survival techniques. I watched from across the room. Watched him listen more than talk. Watched him ask follow-up questions. Watched him treat Henry's stories with the respect they deserved, rather than the tolerance most younger men. Showed, Mrs. Henderson appeared beside me, that Mr. Barrett's quite eligible. Is he? I kept my voice neutral. Established ranch, good prospects, clean reputation. Several mothers have been dropping hints about their daughters. I'm sure he's noticed. Yet he spends his time with Henry Crawford. She said it like an accusation. Like choosing conversation with an elderly man over dancing with pretty girls was somehow suspect. Maybe he's interested in local history, I suggested. Maybe he's particular about company, she countered. Then, meaningfully, some men prefer substance over sweetness. I didn't answer. Didn't let myself think about what she was implying. Weeks passed, then more weeks. I stopped tracking how often we met. Started noticing other things, how his coffee was better than mine. How silence with him felt different than silence alone. Working with him was like dancing. Not that I remembered dancing, but some instinct suggested this was what partnership looked like. Movements, coordinating. Rhythm synchronizing, 2 becoming one unit without either disappearing. I caught myself looking forward to Tuesday meetings. That was dangerous. I told myself it was good business partnership. The lie tasted different this time. Less like truth. More like wishful thinking. The railroad proposal was nearly complete when Barrett suggested celebrating with supper. Supper. I repeated. Not coffee. Supper. He said it deliberately. Acknowledging the shift. The hotel restaurant. Saturday evening. I hesitated for 3 heartbeats. 1 supper meant something beyond business. 2, the town would notice. 3. I wanted to say yes more than I wanted safety. All right, I said. Saturday arrived too slowly and too quickly. I changed clothes 3 times, which was ridiculous. Settled on my blue dress, the one I'd worn to James's funeral and hadn't touched since. It still fit. Barely. I met Barrett at the restaurant at 7. He'd reserved a corner table, away from the main room, but not hidden. Public, but private. He stood when I arrived. Mrs. Wilson. Mr. Barrett. We sat. The formality felt strange after months of working together, sharing coffee, finishing each other's sentences. We ordered. The waitress recognized us both. Smiled a particular smile that meant she'd be repeating this to someone within the hour. I ignored her. The Railroad Commission responds next week, Barrett said. Establishing safe territory. They'll approve it, I said. The proposal's solid. Thanks to your market analysis and your infrastructure planning. We fell silent. The conversation felt hollow, suddenly business talk in a context that wanted something else. Tell me about your life before ranching, he said, shifting ground. You weren't born to cattle. No, I wasn't. I was born in Philadelphia. My father was a banker. I married at 23. Moved west with James. He wanted adventure. I paused. What had I wanted? I wanted to support him. Did you? His tone was curious, not judgmental. Yes. Then he died, and I had to support myself. I sipped my wine. The glass was half empty already. When had I drunk that much? Everyone assumed I'd fail. Sell the ranch, go home. Accept defeat gracefully. But you didn't. I proved them wrong. The words came faster, looser. But I'm still proving it. Every day, every decision, every fence I fix, every head I sell, proving I can manage alone. That sounds exhausting. Something in his tone, understanding without pity, cracked something in me. It is God. It is 3 years of proving. I'm so tired of proving. He didn't answer immediately. Let the words settle. Finally, you don't have to prove anything to me. I looked up sharply. His expression was serious, sincere. I came west from Boston, he said. Family business. 4 generations of Barretts in textiles. Very successful. Very suffocating. They had my whole life planned to take over the business. Marry the appropriate girl. Produce appropriate heirs. Everything appropriate, nothing real. So you left. I ran. He smiled slightly. Told myself it was pursuing independence. Really. I was suffocating. I wanted to build something real, something mine. Not inherited, not obligated. Just authentic. And ranching is authentic. Cattle don't care about social status. They care if you feed them properly. I find that refreshing. I almost laughed. The wine had made me warm, made conversation easier, made his eyes seem particularly gray in the lamplight. We talked through dinner, not about business, about books we'd read, places we'd been, small childhood memories that shaped us. He told me about learning to ride in Central Park, feeling ridiculous in English tack while dreaming of Western ranges. I told him about my mother's insistence that ladies never contradicted gentlemen, and how much trouble that advice had caused me. "You contradict me regularly," he observed. "Does it bother you?" "I count on it." "You're usually right." We walked back toward my wagon slowly. The night was cool. Stars were sharp overhead. Our footsteps echoed on the boardwalk. "Most people dim themselves to fit in," he said quietly. "You got brighter." I stopped walking, looked at him. He met my eyes steadily. "That's what I've noticed most about you, Martha. Everyone else makes themselves smaller to be acceptable. You refused. You got bigger, stronger, more competent. You took what could have broken you and used it to become more yourself." My throat was tight. "The town doesn't appreciate that." "The town's wrong." Simple words. Absolute certainty. I felt something crack in my chest, some defensive wall I'd built so carefully. "Thank you for supper." I managed. "Thank you for accepting." I climbed into my wagon, drove home under stars that seemed brighter than usual, lay awake until 2 in the morning, replaying his words. You got brighter. When had his opinion started mattering? When did I start checking my reflection before Tuesday meetings? When did I start hoping he'd notice things: new shirts, clean boots, hair that I'd actually brushed for once? The questions terrified me, because hoping meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant potential pain. I'd had enough pain. At 3 in the morning, I stared at my ceiling and admitted the truth. I was afraid. Not of him. Of wanting him. Of letting hope back in after I'd worked so hard to kill it. I sat in my kitchen at dawn, coffee gone cold. One question circling endlessly: was I brave enough to want something beyond survival? I didn't have an answer yet. The drought arrived in late May. Wrong season, wrong timing. Spring should have meant rain. Instead brought dust and anxious calculation. The creek dropped 2 feet in a week. Grazing land yellowed. Cattle crowded the remaining water sources. Every rancher in the county watched the sky and worried. The water board met on Tuesday. I attended because water rights affected everyone. Barrett was there too. So were the old guard ranchers who'd been here longest, owned most, and wielded authority like inheritance. Marcus Brennan chaired the meeting. 70 years old, 4,000 acres. 3 sons and the attitude that newcomers should defer to experience. "Water situation's critical," Brennan announced. "We need to enforce priority rights. Senior claims first. Junior claims after." Simple. Simple for him. His claim dated to 1858. Mine dated to 1878. Barrett's to this year. Simple meant we got less, possibly nothing. "That's not sustainable," I said. "Enforcing seniority means newer operations fail. Then who buys their land? That's not managing resources, that's land consolidation." Brennan's expression hardened. "Mrs. Wilson, water law is complicated. Maybe I should understand that cooperation benefits everyone while competition destroys weaker operations." I kept my voice level, firm, without antagonism. "I propose an alternative. Shared irrigation system using the creek that runs between my property and Barrett's. Rotate access among neighboring ranches. Turn competitors into stakeholders." Silence followed. The ranchers exchanged glances, some thoughtful, some skeptical. That would require significant investment. One pointed out, which we'd share proportionally, Barrett added. Mrs. Wilson and I would handle primary infrastructure since the creek runs through our land. Other ranchers would contribute based on their usage percentage. I'd discussed none of this with him beforehand. He was improvising based on my suggestion. Supporting without overshadowing. Partnership without choreography. Interesting idea, someone said. Interesting but impractical, Brennan countered. Shared systems create conflict. Someone always takes more than their share. Then we establish clear measurement and enforcement. I said, treat it like any contract. Terms, consequences. Mutual benefit. The discussion continued for another hour. Some ranchers saw the logic. Others resisted change. Barrett provided technical details about irrigation mechanics. I provided economic projections showing cost savings. Eventually, we put it to a vote. 8 in favor, 4 against. The shared system would proceed. After the meeting, Brennan approached me. His expression was carefully neutral. Clever solution, Mrs. Wilson. Thank you. Though you might have discussed it with the board before presenting, I developed the idea during the meeting. Mr. Barrett and I collaborate well under pressure. Brennan's eyes shifted to Barrett, then back to me. So I see. Partnership suits you. The words carried weight beyond irrigation systems. I rode home feeling something unfamiliar. Not quite satisfaction. Closer to belonging. I'd contributed meaningfully to community problem solving. Been heard. Been taken seriously. That evening, Barrett arrived at my ranch. I was checking the creek level, measuring the drop, calculating our usage rates. We did good work today, he said. We did. You handled Brennan perfectly. Firm without antagonizing him. He's not used to women disagreeing. He's not used to anyone disagreeing. You made him reconsider without making him defensive. That's skill. We stood by the creek in evening light. The water was lower than I'd like, but sufficient for now. The drought would break, eventually. It always did. I trust you, I said suddenly. He turned, surprised. I trust your judgment. I continued. I trust you won't undermine me. I trust that when you say partnership, you mean partnership. I've spent 3 years trusting no one. It's strange to trust someone again. I trust you too, he said quietly. Trust your strategy, your competence, your honesty. You don't perform. You don't manipulate. You just are. It's remarkable. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unsaid things. The railroad proposal gets decided next week, I said, steering toward safer territory. Yes? Then the partnership terms conclude. Yes. Neither of us moved. The creek murmured over stones. A hawk called from somewhere high. The sun dropped toward the ridge. Martha, I should check the fence line. I interrupted. Whatever he'd been about to say felt too large for this moment. I wasn't ready. He nodded. Understood. Thursday, he said. Our regular meeting. Thursday. He rode off. I watched him go, then turned to tasks that didn't require thinking. But that night, lying awake, I let myself think. 3 years of survival had taught me caution, taught me walls protected better than openness, taught me alone was safer than together. But walls also prevented connection. Safety prevented living, alone prevented partnership, I'd won today. We'd won. The irrigation plan would secure multiple operations, including mine. But more than that, I'd functioned as part of something larger, contributed to community, been seen as valuable. I'd spent 3 years proving I didn't need anyone. Discovering I wanted someone felt like betrayal and relief mixed. Partnership wasn't about needing rescue. It was about choosing not to face everything alone. The distinction mattered. I was beginning to understand how much the irrigation system succeeded. The drought broke. Summer arrived with good grass and grateful cattle. The Railroad Commission approved our proposal. Thomas Barrett became Thomas to me and Barrett to everyone else. We completed the partnership terms, signed the final documents. The railroad spur would be built by fall. Then something shifted. The community embraced him, accepted him. The old ranchers invited him to their gatherings. The mothers brought their daughters to town events conveniently when he'd be there. Mrs. Henderson mentioned her niece from Denver. Lovely girl, she told him at the general store while I stood 3 feet away. Invisible, refined, well-educated. Perfect rancher's wife? Really. She's visiting next month. You must meet her. Thomas was polite, non-committal. Perhaps, but he didn't refuse. Didn't say no, definitively. Just perhaps, I rode home that afternoon with supplies I didn't remember buying. Unloaded them mechanically. Made dinner I didn't taste. Sat at my table with 1 plate, 1 fork, 1 glass. The usual. The partnership was complete. The railroad approved. We'd achieved what we'd set out to achieve. We had no reason to meet regularly anymore. No Tuesday meetings, no Thursday planning sessions. No reason for him to appear at my ranch or for me to visit his. We'd accomplished our goal. Successfully. Now it was done, and I was alone again, back where I'd started. Except it felt different now. Worse, somehow. Because I'd let myself hope. Let myself imagine something beyond business partnership. Let myself wonder if we could extend past contracted terms. Foolish? I'd been foolish. That night I couldn't sleep. Lay in bed, cataloging my stupidity. I'd let my guard down. Let someone in. Started depending on Tuesday meetings and Thursday planning sessions and coffee shared without asking how he took it because I knew. Because we'd developed shorthand and synchronized rhythm and all the small intimacies of partnership. And now it was ending. Because of course it was ending. Because men like Thomas, educated, established, competent, didn't choose women like me. Women who wore pants and spoke plainly and ran cattle alone. They chose appropriate wives. Refined girls from Denver. Women who'd make them comfortable, not challenge them. Mrs. Crawford had been right. What man wants a woman who acts like one at 2 a.m? I got up, lit the lamp, pulled out paper and pen. I drafted a letter to Thomas explaining that I needed to focus exclusively on my own operation going forward, that the partnership had been productive but was now complete, that we'd successfully accomplished our shared goal and should return to independent operations. Professional but final. Protecting myself before he could reject me. I read it over 3 times. Each word felt like closing a door. Each sentence like retreat. But retreat was safer than rejection. Control the narrative. Protect myself. Step back before being pushed away. I sealed the letter, addressed it, set it on my desk, watched dawn break over the ranch. Ranch, same fences, same cattle, same woman I'd been 3 years ago alone, careful, walled, except I wasn't the same woman. I'd tasted partnership, tasted being seen and valued, tasted the possibility of something beyond solitary survival, and now I was choosing to abandon it. Choosing safety over risk, choosing walls over vulnerability. I sat at my kitchen table with cold coffee and faced the truth. I was terrified. Terrified of hoping, terrified of wanting, terrified that if I let myself fully want Thomas, he'd choose someone more appropriate, more acceptable, more easy to love, better to step away now, better to end it on my terms. The letter sat on my desk. 43 words. Cowardice fit on surprisingly little paper. I didn't send it that day or the next. It sat there, sealed and addressed. A retreat I could execute whenever courage finally failed completely. 3 years ago, I'd lost my husband. That week, I feared losing something harder to name the possibility that someone might want me exactly as I was. I'd spent 3 years protecting my heart. Forgot hearts were meant to be used. The letter waited. Decision waited. Fear and hope warred inside me. The only question left, which would I choose the woman I'd been, armored and alone, or the woman I might become, vulnerable and partnered. I watched dawn break over the ranch. Same ranch, same woman, same fear I'd carried for years. I still didn't have an answer. Thomas appeared at my ranch on Thursday morning, 2 days after I'd written the letter. I was in the barn, mucking stalls because manual labor quieted my mind when thinking became unbearable. I heard his horse, recognized the rhythm of its gait, kept working. He appeared in the barn doorway, backlit by morning sun. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could hear his breathing faster than normal, like he'd ridden hard. Martha. I stopped working, leaned on my pitchfork, waited. I need to say something before I lose my nerve. He stepped into the barn. His expression was agitated. I'd never seen him rattled. Mrs. Henderson's been parading eligible women past me for 2 weeks. Her niece arrives next Tuesday. The men at the water board keep suggesting I need a proper wife to truly establish myself here. To be taken seriously, to be fully accepted. I braced. This was it. He was explaining why he had to court someone appropriate. Why our partnership, whatever it had been, had to end. I gripped the pitchfork tighter. Every time they describe what I supposedly need. He continued. I think of you. They want someone soft. You're strong. They want someone quiet. You're direct. They want someone who'll make me comfortable. You challenge me. They want someone who needs managing. You run your own operation better than I run mine. My breath caught. I don't want what they're offering. Martha, I don't want someone I have to manage or someone who'll manage me. I don't want appropriate or easy or comfortable. I want a partner who challenges me, pushes me to be better, meets me as equal. That's you. That's only ever been you. The barn felt too small suddenly. Too full of hope I didn't trust. You came here to tell me that... My voice was rough. I came here because I'm tired of pretending business partnership is enough. Because I can't keep showing up on Thursdays when we don't have meetings anymore, just hoping you'll need... Help with something. Because Mrs. Henderson's niece arrives Tuesday, and I needed you to know before she arrives. Before everyone starts expecting me to court her, I needed you to know. I want you. I could have deflected. Could have made a joke. Could have protected myself with distance and careful words. Instead, I chose truth. I'd stopped apologizing for who I was before you arrived, I said quietly. But I hadn't stopped expecting rejection for it. I've been waiting for you to realize you'd do better with someone easier. Someone the town would approve. Someone who'd make your life simpler instead of more complicated. Martha, I wrote you a letter. I gestured toward the house. It's on my desk, explaining why we should end our whatever this is. Professionally, cleanly, before it gets messy. His jaw tightened. You were going to end this. I was going to protect myself before you rejected me. The words came out harsh, honest, because that's what I do. Thomas, I protect myself. I wall myself off. I expect the worst, because the worst is usually what happens to women like me. Women like you, women who don't fit, who aren't appropriate, who wear pants and speak plainly and refuse to be managed. My voice cracked. What man wants a woman who acts like one? That's what they say. That's what they've always said. What do you want? He asked quietly. Not what you think you deserve. Not what the town says you should have. What do you want? The question broke something in me. Something that had been locked tight for 3 years. 3 years of not wanting, not hoping, not imagining anything beyond survival. I want partnership that celebrates differences instead of demanding conformity. I said, I want to build something together that's stronger than what either of us could build alone. I want to stop being afraid of wanting that. I stopped. Started again. I want you. He closed the distance between us, took the pitchfork from my hands, and set it aside carefully. Looked at me with absolute attention. I want you too, he said, not despite who you are, because of who you are, because you're competent and honest and brave, because you challenge me and respect me and treat me like a partner instead of a manager, because you got brighter when everyone else would have dimmed, because you're exactly who I've been looking for without knowing I was looking. I kissed him, reached up and pulled him down and kissed him, because words weren't enough, and I'd spent 3 years protecting myself, and I was done protecting myself and done being afraid. He kissed back. His hands cupped my face like I was precious, like I was chosen, like I was wanted exactly as I was. When we finally pulled apart, I was shaking. He steadied me. The partnership terms ended last week. I said, then we need new terms. What kind of terms? Marriage. But not traditional marriage. Partnership marriage. Equal ownership. Equal say, we keep both ranches operating. Make decisions together. Build something neither of us could build alone. The town will talk. The town always talks. Do you care? I thought about that. Really thought about it. 3 years ago, the town's opinion had felt overwhelming. Their whispers had shaped my choices. Their judgment had built my walls. Now, I'd learned something more important than approval. I'd learned authenticity mattered more than acceptance. No, I said, I don't care. Then marry me. Partner with me. Challenge me for the next 40 years. You make it sound romantic. I make it sound real. Romance is easy. Partnership is work. Good work. Work that matters. Work I want to do with you. I looked at him. Really looked. Saw the man who'd respected my competence, who'd trusted my strategy, who'd supported without overshadowing, who'd asked, "What do you want?" instead of telling me what I should want. I thought about the letter on my desk, the retreat I'd almost chosen, the safety I'd almost prioritized over living. Then I thought about Tuesday mornings and Thursday planning sessions and coffee shared without asking. Because we knew each other's preferences. I thought about synchronized fence repairs and shared victories and the easy silence that came from real partnership. "Yes," I said, "I'll marry you." We sat on hay bales and planned our future like we'd planned the railroad proposal practically, carefully, with clear terms and honest communication, equal ownership of combined operations, both houses maintained, decisions made jointly, no traditional promises of obedience, just promises to challenge and support each other. He pulled a small box from his pocket. "I've been carrying this for 3 weeks. Couldn't figure out how to give it to you without scaring you off." Inside was a simple gold band. No diamonds. Just solid gold. "It's perfect," I said. "Like you." "I'm not perfect." "You're perfect for me." "There's a difference." I slipped the ring on. It fit. Everything fit suddenly. The pieces I'd thought incompatible independence and partnership, strength and vulnerability, self-sufficiency and chosen connection. I'd made my choice. Not the safe one, not the easy one, the true one. Turned out truth was the bravest thing I'd ever chosen. We married 3 weeks later. No big ceremony. Just signatures at the courthouse. Legal documents making everything equal and official. Then a simple gathering at my ranch with friends and neighbors. I wore my blue dress. Thomas wore his suit. We said vows we'd written ourselves, promises about partnership, honesty, challenge, support. No promises about obedience. No traditional language. Just our language. Partnership language. Mrs. Henderson attended. Looked disapproving, but came anyway. Mrs. Crawford cried a little. Several old ranchers congratulated Thomas, told him he'd chosen well. I appreciated that they told him instead of me, as if I'd been the prize won rather than the partner chosen. But some things you let go, some battles you don't fight. Henry Crawford gave the toast. To Martha and Thomas. 2 stubborn people who figured out stubborn works better together. May you argue productively for 50 years. We'd laughed. It was the most honest blessing anyone could have offered. That was 4 years ago. Time now for reflection. We kept both houses, some nights at mine, some at his. Sometimes we split the difference and sleep at neither, camping near the north pasture during calving season or staying in town after late meetings. Flexibility over tradition. Partnership over convention. The combined operation thrives. The railroad stop opened 2 years ago. Our irrigation system became model for 3 neighboring counties. Last year, we were invited to speak at the Territorial Agricultural Conference. I did the presentation. Thomas handled questions. We functioned as unit while remaining individuals. The town's opinion evolved slowly. Not approval exactly. I still wear pants, still speak plainly, still make decisions without apology. But respect. They started asking my advice about business, about managing difficult situations, about refusing to diminish yourself for others' comfort, young women especially. Girls who'd been told to make themselves smaller, women who'd been told their competence was threatening. They come to me asking how I did it, how I stayed myself, how I found partnership without losing ground. I tell them the truth. You don't find it. You choose it. You choose yourself first. Then you choose partnership with someone who values your fullness instead of demanding your diminishment. This morning, we sat at my original kitchen table reviewing breeding records. Same table where we'd negotiated railroad terms, where we'd shared that first nervous coffee. Where we'd planned our unconventional marriage, Thomas brought me coffee without asking how I take it. He's known for 4 years. Black. One sugar I'd softened slightly since those bitter early days. You calculated the weight projections wrong, I said, pointing to his figures. He laughed. Checked his math. You're right. Again. Someone has to keep you honest. That's why I married you. Among other reasons, I looked at him across the table, still challenging me, still respecting me, still treating partnership like sacred trust rather than convenient arrangement. The letter I'd written that desperate night still sits in my desk drawer. I keep it as a reminder. The woman I almost chose to stay small, safe, alone, cowardice preserved in 43 words. I pull it out sometimes when I need reminding, when I face difficult choices, when I'm tempted toward safety over truth. That woman seems distant now, foreign. I understand her fear. I honor her survival. But I'm grateful I didn't let her win. I learned that being different isn't flaw requiring apology. It's authenticity that attracts, right? Partnership. The years of loneliness weren't punishment for refusing to conform. They were preparation for recognizing real partner when he arrived. Never diminish yourself to fit someone's expectations. The person meant for you will value exactly what makes you unique. True partnership celebrates differences rather than demanding conformity. I watch Thomas across the table. He's arguing with me about cattle genetics. I'm proving him wrong with data. We're both smiling. This is love, not soft, not easy, but real. Not the love poems describe, the love that functions. Love built on challenge and respect and honest conversation about breeding strategies. I'd spent so long protecting my heart. I'd forgotten hearts were meant to be used. Used for loving, for partnering, for building something larger than solitude. Thomas looks up, catches me watching. What, nothing, everything? I'm grateful. For what? For you asking, what do you want? For me being brave enough to answer honestly. For both of us choosing partnership over safety. He reaches across the table, takes my hand, the one wearing his simple gold band. Best choice I ever made. Best choice we ever made. We go back to our breeding records, our combined operation, our partnership that's become more than business, more than marriage, more than either of us alone. I look at the unsent letter one last time before returning it to the drawer. Reminder of woman I almost chose to be again, small, safe, alone. I'm grateful every day for the woman I chose to become instead. The one who got brighter. The one who asked for what she wanted. The one who said yes to partnership, to challenge, to love that didn't require apology. The one who finally believed she was enough exactly as she was. The cattle need feeding. The fence needs checking. Thomas needs convincing that my breeding strategy is superior to his. Just another day. Just the life we built together. Just everything I never knew I wanted until I was brave enough to want it.